Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review X-Men 97 Episode 1. So, I'm going to be trying slightly different things, that being particularly reviewing particular episodes within a series, maybe doing an entire series after the fact. We'll see how it all pans out, but nonetheless, I am here to review the first episode of X-Men 97. So this is one of the many shows that I grew up, indeed, watching in the 1990s as well, though my memory of it was a little bit hazy outside of the main theme song, which I'm pretty sure is stuck in everyone's who've seen the show's head anyway. So with that being said, I remember this series having this semi-serious, once-in-a-blue-moon, goofy sort of feel to it. It is really hard to remember, like, the show, like the actual episodes. But it is something a series like this is, let's say, growing in concern with, where, there's always that thing in the back of your head that's like, well, we want new stuff. And, though, I will say, to sort of combat that narrative, at least from a subjective and, somewhat objective point of view, some sort of mixing them together here. X-Men, and I should probably say a more biased view of the X-Men, actually, is X-Men is what inspired me to write my own book, that being Syndicate X, my own version of, these beings that were outcasts that could do unique things, very much inspired by the X-Men. So, despite my vagueness in remembering the classics, I wanted to come into the, the continuation, I guess this is, of the series with open-mindedness and trying to be as objective as possible. Now, from my recollection, X-Men was geared towards a younger audience, sort of like teen age is where I would see this. It may be slightly under that in terms of what this show would tackle. And I remember that being, even if my memory of the show was hazy, I do kind of remember, again, that sort of cheesiness, and when it was being dramatic, the dialogue, again, from my recollection, was very direct. And those are the two elements that I was sort of expecting to see carried over, and none to my surprise are those the two elements that are very prevalent within the very first episode of 97. So to start us off, we actually follow up seeing how the spreading news of Charles Xavier's death, though there is some dialogue in the show that seems to imply that he's missing from the X-Men's perspective. I'm a little bit lost on that one, to be honest. That could be cleared up. It is only episode 1, but it does seem, at least from the news's perspective, that he has been taken out by a mutant, someone who is against mutants, generally speaking. And of course, one of the vintage themes of the X-Men, since its inception, was sort of the early 1990s, like, epidemic and, acceptance of other being LGBT+, or back then the plus probably I mean, it wasn't a thing back then, but you know what I mean. All Things essentially is that X-Men was always sort of that allegorical story, and what we see here is we get a new character, sort of to be a lens of which we are seeing the X-Men outside of that perspective, outside of like, oh, they're the team we've known for years. This is like the brand new guy for the new audience, you know, the sort of fresh meat attitude, to give us a glimpse of what it would be like from the outside, even though he's a mutant himself. And indeed, when he's in trouble, we see that charging up the beginning of the rescue mission is Storm, followed up by Bishop, who I think they changed. I don't remember Bishop being like this. But then again, it has been a while, so maybe I'm just misremembering what Bishop used to be like in terms of his attitude, I mean. I could be wrong, but I don't know. But, this guy is just trying to get out, but, you know, of the situation, being, essentially being held up by these mercenaries who I'm guessing are either going to sell him off or kill him. It seems to be either... I mean, they do seem to be more holding him, so I'm guessing it's the previous thing I'm thinking of here, where they're just going to sell him off or something. But Cyclops joins in the fray, and I will say, out of all the characters, I'm probably most surprised about Cyclops' treatment here. I mean, yeah, he was the leader of the X-Men, but he was sort of always like the... you know, within this love triangle between Jean and Wolverine back in the day, Cyclops used to be the butt of the joke more oftentimes than not. And it does seem like they kind of allude to that a little bit here. But they do give him plenty of badass moments here as well. I don't ever recall, and I could be wrong here, memory's fuzzy on this one, where he would push himself back using his own laser ability. This is something I don't remember him ever doing in the original show. Again, I could be wrong on that. In fact, when they do a Skyfall later on in the episode, he focuses so much laser on the ground, he's able to just soft land himself on the ground without needing a fly assist from our various flying-based beings, which include all of our leading ladies, with the exception of Jubilee and Morph, I believe, are the ones that can fly, if I remember all of their abilities correctly. Because Morph can just change into somebody that can fly, essentially. And we see the characters that are staying behind a little bit more often, like Gambit and Rogue, that being in the X base, I'll call it. The school, essentially. And we see that Morph, and this is another character I don't remember a lot of. I don't remember a lot about Morph. I think he used to be a bit of a tease, so I think this might actually be accurate. I don't know. Again, I'm trying to, you know, peer into my own memory of Morph here. He does mess with Cyclops a little bit here, turning into Jean, and so on and so forth, making sure, you know... Also, while kind of giving us, as the audience, our exposition as to where these characters kind of are when doing so. But our new kid, our young adult named Roberto, wakes up in the lab. He's joined by one beast in Jubilee. So they're trying to calm him down, and he's like, I kind of don't like the base or area that I'm in. So they change him to the room of the training room, where he sees Magneto, and it's like a training simulator. And Wolverine legitimately freaks him out because he's actually there. And they call in someone from the outside. I don't remember this lady at all. Her name is like Cooper or something. Apparently she used to work with Xavier in like tow of like with the government and like these raids of like helping out town people or whatever. I'm not really sure. Again, I don't remember this at all. So anyway, so Jean talks to Cyclops about how she's pregnant now and wants her child to be safe. So they kind of allude to them leaving. The two, base members of X-Men are wanting to, again, sort of leave, but it's never hard confirmed, though the implication seems to be now set here, at least in episode 1. But I'm trying to, I do apologize, I have to look at my notes a little bit here, but so we see more of Morph teasing Wolverine now with Jean again, since he also had, again, that love triangle back in the day. So he knows how to mess with him too. And they're at this club at this point, because that's where the young guy ended up running off, young Roberto here. And so he ends up having a little dance with Jubilee. The rest of them are kind of in the distance. We see the end result of Wolverine's fight with the incoming envoy of baddies. We get introduced to our main baddie, or at least for this episode. I'm not sure if it's like a rogues gallery yet, quite, of this series, but we have, I believe his name was pronounced Gyrick? That's what I have in my notes. And his dialogue, as I mentioned, is very direct about how tolerance equals extinction. Like, you can't even... Like, tolerance is like the bare minimum, by the way, of what people would expect, especially in, in the now of 2024. But, this is back in 97, as the series title implies. This was back when, gay marriage wasn't even a thing on the table yet. And, being a supporter was also seen as probably problematic as well back then, which is probably, again, why this series even exists, is to be like, we stand with them, like, sort of thing. But again, the dialogue is very direct. And we see Jean use Cerebro to mess with him, but she is quickly cut off by, and if I have it in my notes correctly, Master Mold. I'm not too familiar with this name from the comics, I would guess. But I don't know what purpose he quite serves, other than to be some vague threat. As we see them fly in, as I mentioned before, we have them do their drop. And they do their cool landing hero pose, and they go to this guy who he had a connection with, Gyrick, named, his last name I believe is Trask. That's what I wrote in my notes anyway. And he has these sentinels left over that can battle them, and just as the battle kicks off, the vintage theme with updated, heavier guitar riffs, which I already saw one review complaining about that with the intro, and I'm like, but why? It's not even bad. It's like, I don't know, I think it's an improvement of the original theme. I mean, it's so close enough. It's like, yeah, you can add a little spice to it. Why not? I mean, again, I don't know why there's such strict, like, it has to be one-to-one with the nostalgia. I don't understand this criticism already of the show. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me that there would be already issues with the opening theme song of X-Men, considering it's, again, like one of the top themes of all time, and all they did was reuse it and update it. And, like, again, it confuses me that that would be a criticism. It's like, I don't know, it kind of sounds a little better now, if anything. I don't know. What else do you want me to say? It sounds a little better. Like, if it's objectively better, then it's objectively better. What of it? It doesn't matter if it's new. Anyway, we see some cool sequences here. You saw it in the trailer where Wolverine gets lit up by Gambit's, I guess it's like a purple psychic explosion thing. Link? I don't know what I would call it yet, but it's a pretty cool move where he teams that up with Morph becoming like a fat balloon to like bounce Wolverine up to the Sentinel and slashing its head off. So, during this fight, or after it, I'm not sure which, Jubilee has a talk with young Roberto over here about fitting in, and we have our vintage, again, since he's the new guy of the group. He talks about how he hasn't not only told his parents, but using his powers, which he demonstrates, apparently it's this solar energy, he says how it reminds him of what it means to be different, and how that makes him not want to be himself. So that is a very clear allegory, obviously. Being in secret, not coming out to your parents, showing a romance of the same sex would be seen as, bad back then, is my best way of putting this. And he doesn't want, this particular character doesn't want to be perceived that way. He feels wrong about it because probably his upbringing with his parents being in this secret lifestyle has you can already fill in the gaps. His parents are probably more conservative. His parents are probably a lot more religious. Like, those two things usually go hand in hand. I'm just saying, that's factual. I'm sorry, but it's the truth as well. Actually, I'm not sorry at all. I shouldn't be. I shouldn't have to be, but I shouldn't have to be apologizing for the truth anyway. But we get a bit of our next bit of flirtation between Roberto and Jubilee here at the end, or near the end of the series, but the rest of the X-Men as well as her are called in, and this is where we see the end of the episode, and this was already acknowledged in the trailer, where we see Magneto is the one now in control, the new lead of the X-Men. And for those somehow not in the know, Magneto, it was once their rival, so that can definitely lead to some conflicts with him leading the X-Men. Now, I checked the listings. Episode 2 does seem to be out already. I'll be checking that out, and I don't know if I want to do a episode-by-episode breakdown yet. If you ended up enjoying this breakdown, then please let me know. I'll probably be breaking down every episode if that's the case, but again, I'll wait and see on that. But with that in mind, I will say, I think this is, Marvel has been struggling. Let's be real. it has been suffering for a long time. Uh, the past few gaps have been severely suffering. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot more writing on this series than I think people are, currently kind of gauging at it from, maybe. I think that a lot more people need to be checking this out, just to show that, this is kind of what we want to see more of from Marvel. Even if it's something based on nostalgia. And again, I am completely in the camp of, yes, I do want there to be new superheroes. I get it. Like I said, I have my own book, my own group of own superheroes. I've been dying to share them with the world. I've been sharing them with my 2 different D&D groups, Dungeons and Dragons groups, for a while now, and they've been loving it. And I want to show more people my, team off at some point, so I might do a 3rd group at some point, but I digress. I think that a lot is riding on this series, and mayhaps, it'll probably be more, and this is probably the sadder truth, is that the whole, outlook, I guess is a good word of saying, is I think the fate of Marvel will more so rely on the movie, at least in terms of how people are viewing the whole state of Marvel as an entity, as a brand per se. Because again, a lot of bad will has been prodded into Marvel by a allotted slock that has been purveying all throughout, throughout this, the last 2 sort of installments of their installments? I don't know what I would call them anymore. I forget what the official word they keep using is. I'm actually, completely brained it out of my brain. But yeah, I think that this season has a lot of potential, and the show has a lot of potential, and I hope that this vast resurgence of a nostalgic group will allow, companies and maybe some independent people to be like, yeah, maybe I can make my own, version of X-Men. I personally did, and I would hope and want that more people would be like, I can do this too, and mayhaps find different ways of exploring their ideas, whether that be the future in YouTube or some other independent means or whatever. As this episode stands, I get it, it's very direct, but again, I'm trying to keep in mind that it was originally slated to be for a younger audience in mind, and I do think that it very much carries out that attitude with the direct dialogue that it uses here for its characters, especially the villains, in contrast to our heroes. And I did hear some I did hear about some complaints about the voice acting. I kind of had a sense of that in the trailer, but I did not catch any of it here in episode 1. I think so far, at least in episode 1, everything seemed, even the voice acting included, seems to be really spot on, or really solid at the very most. So even that seems to be on par with what I would expect from a revival of the show. And we will see where it goes from there. So I guess if I were to individually give this episode a score, I think I would probably either dip into a 7 or even possibly 8 out of 10. I think that this episode was a fantastic way to reintroduce the X-Men back. And give us a new enough information to be like, there are quite a few, the potential areas where they can be, where they can be slotted, whether that being how they deal with Magneto, is Charles alive? Question mark. Because again, it did seem from their perspective, the X-Men perspective, like that was a possibility. But again, I don't know. But we shall see, I suppose. So, again, if you want to see a episode by episode breakdown, or if you want to wait for the rest of the show to come up, that does mean I'll have to find a way to keep making videos outside of this subject for the time being, I suppose. But we'll see. Anyways, that was my review, and if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will still head you over to my petition to help out small YouTubers. Second will head you over to my PayPal. I'm actually going to be removing my Patreon for the time being because I don't find Patreon to be a very useful tool to me. But anyway, and last will head you over to my Discord server. We can join, talk to each other, shill, collab, do all that cool stuff for free. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.